spoke of a river that would take him deep into the interior of the continent. As for other explorers, he hoped to find a route to China, the land of spices, the value of which had shot up after the Ottomans had seized Constantinople in the middle of the 15th century. The French sailed upriver as far as Stadacona, later to be called Quebec. Stadacona was at the heart of a region known as the Kingdom of Canada, with Canada being a place name of Iroquoian origin, meaning a village or group of houses. After a brief visit to the large aboriginal town of Hochelaga on the island of Montreal, Cartier and his men settled in to face the rigors of their first North American winter. Early in May 1536, before weighing anchor for France, he erected another cross with the French coat of arms and the Latin inscription, François I, reigning by the grace of God, King of the French. This was in fact a second claim to possession of the land. Along with the Spanish and the Portuguese who had established settlements in America, the French hoped to settle the St. Lawrence Valley. In 1541, Jacques Cartier was appointed second in command to Jean-François de la Roque, Sieur de Roberval, and they crossed the Atlantic again, bringing hundreds of settlers with them, many of whom came straight from prison. Cartier returned hastily to France, however, believing that the gold and diamonds he had in his ship would be proof of the riches in the New World. Roberval had reached Newfoundland by then, and was preparing to sail upriver. This second attempt to settle was also doomed to fail, and the failure was compounded by the fact that Cartier's riches were nothing but fool's gold and quartz. Thus ended the first chapter in the history of the formal French presence in Quebec. More than half a century went by before other plans were hatched to settle the St. Lawrence River Valley. Lack of a settlement did not mean, however, that the St. Lawrence was abandoned during that period. The Basques and the French continued to conduct fur trading and fishing expeditions, and rivalry was intense. In 1587, for instance, two of Jacques Cartier's great-nephews, Jean and Michel Noël, were confronted with competing traders along the river. At the turn of the 17th century, the riches in New France were attracting more and more merchants and investors. King Henri IV, who ruled France from 1589 to 1610, set his sights on establishing a colony in the New World. In 1598, he granted letters patent to Troilus de la Roche de Mesguet, making him Lieutenant General of the countries of Canada, Newfoundland, Labrador, and Norumbegwe. His efforts to establish a settlement on Sable Island failed, as did those of Pierre de Chauvin de Tonatouy at Tadoussac in 1600. Tadoussac is located on the north shore of the St. Lawrence at the mouth of the Saguenay River. Attempts to settle St. Croix Island, located near the New Brunswick-Maine border, were equally unsuccessful. French presence at Port Royal in Acadia was also sporadic, and only when a fur trading post was opened at Quebec did it become possible to maintain a permanent settlement. When the English settled in Virginia in 1607, they represented a potential threat to Acadia, but more importantly, they jeopardized the French fur trade monopoly. This prompted Pierre Duguay de Monts to opt for another site to establish a small colony that would be closer to the inland source of fur supplies. He identified the Quebec Point on the north shore of the St. Lawrence as the ideal spot and instructed his lieutenant, Samuel de Champlain, to sail to the place where the St. Lawrence River narrows, and with a team of men build a small settlement. They started building a group of houses on July 3rd, 1608, and later they would fortify them. The Basques, who worked out of Tadoussac, were not pleased at all, and perceived the permanent upstream settlement as a threat to trade. They managed to convince some of Champlain's men to try to assassinate him, but the plot failed, and a conspirator named Jean Duval was hanged. During the first winter in Quebec, scurvy ravaged the tiny